Okay. So yesterday we talked about artifacts, right?
Yeah.
Remember? Someone raise their hand and tell me what an artifact is. Kevin.
An artifact is something from the olden days.
Something from the olden days? Okay, so something that's old. Maybe somebody made something. Josh?
That's how the Smiles found on. Somebody made it, but then Smiles passed it on.
Okay, good. So maybe if I made a bowl, right, and then maybe in 200 years somebody found it, it'd be an artifact, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we also have evidence. Evidence is proof that something is true. So can anybody give me an example of maybe what evidence would be or where they've heard that word before? Evidence. Samson?
You like when you hear evidence, is this what was the question again? Like when you see the evidence.
Can you maybe give me like an example of something that
Oh,
would be
evidence like
or?
if you're like at a crime scene, you could say like there was that evidence right there.
Okay.
Something happened.
So it's something that you can see that tells you if something really happened or not. Josh?
Evidence is proof.
Evidence is proof. Exactly. Okay. So now that we know that historians need artifacts, they need evidence in order to write up their research and everything, right? So there's also sources. So there's different types of sources. There's a primary source and there's a secondary source. So a primary source is a first-hand piece of evidence. So it's evidence where the person was there, they saw the event or they experienced the event, and so maybe they wrote about it or they took a picture of it. So for an example, say your first day of 6th grade. You know exactly what happened to you on your first day of 6th grade, right?
Yes.
You got ready, you had breakfast, you came to school, you got all excited for class, either you had a good day, a not so good day, however it went, you know exactly how it went. So if you wrote down in your journal when you went home that night how your day went, that would be a primary source because you were there, you experienced it, you knew what happened. So a secondary source is created after an event. So let's say you go home and you tell your mom, asks you, how was your day at school? Like your mom always asks you, right? She asks you, how was your day at school? And you tell her that it was good, maybe you leave some things out, you just tell her a little bit of information that happened. So after you tell her that, she wasn't exactly there, was she? Was she there with you your first day of 6th grade?
No.
No, she wasn't there. She doesn't know what happened, so that would be a secondary source. Can anybody else maybe give me an example of what a secondary source would be? Samson?
Another example is like if you're at a movie theater and then you go after and this guy asks you or someone asks you what happened in the movie, and you tell them something and they tell them something different, then like that's something like the event thing. The primary thing.
The primary, secondary source?
Yeah.
Okay.
I forget.
So it's like secondary source, right? Because they weren't at the movie with you,
Yeah.
but you told them about it afterwards. Josh?
Science might have a fight, and a teacher asked, what happened, and who's there, so you know, or they asked the person that had the fight, or
Okay.
the person that was watching.
Okay, good. So I'm going to give you these little pens, and on one side it says secondary source, and on the other side it says primary source. Okay? And what you're going to do, I'm going to give you an example of a primary source and an example of a secondary sources. And then I want you to hold up which one you think it is. Okay? So first show me secondary source. All right, good. Now show me primary source. You just flip it over. Okay. So let's see. What about a picture? So I took a picture when I was at the beach when I was 2 years old. Someone took a picture of me. Would that be a primary source or would that be a secondary source? Okay, some primary, some secondaries. So that would be a primary source because it actually was there at the time. The picture was taken right then, right there, when I was at the beach when I was 2 years old, right? So I was there, the picture is showing me there. It's a primary source. What about a newspaper article that was written last week about September 11th, which happened a few years ago? Would that be a primary source or a secondary source? A newspaper article that was written last week about something that happened 10 years ago. Okay? So that would be a secondary source.
Oh.
Okay, because say we wrote the newspaper article last week, but let's say that maybe Josh wrote the newspaper article. Maybe he worked for the school newspaper and he wrote the newspaper article, but he wasn't there, was he? Was he there when September 11th happened? No. He was just a little kid, right? A little baby? What about a letter that was written by John Smith? You know who John Smith is?
It's the president?
No, John Smith. And do you know John Smith and Pocahontas?
Oh, yeah.
A little bit? Yeah? Okay, so John Smith was, from a really long time ago, he came over with the Pilgrims, and they were exploring and everything. So John Smith, he wrote a letter to Pocahontas. Would that be a primary source or a secondary source? That would be a primary source, right? Josh is flipping, he doesn't know. Be a primary source because that was a letter that he wrote at that time. It wasn't something that I wrote later about the letter. It was actually the letter. What about your history textbook? Is your history textbook a primary source or a secondary source? Kevin, what do you think? Primary, secondary, your history textbook? Good, secondary source. So the people who wrote your history textbook weren't there at the times that all of these things happened, right? That's not possible. They would have to live forever and ever and ever for them to see that, right? Okay, so next we're going to play a game. It's called Telephone. Does anybody know what telephone is?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so let's learn how we do stand up.
Here we go again.
Alright, stand up and let's make a straight line. Okay, so I'm going to tell Kevin something, and he's going to whisper it to Josh, and Josh is going to whisper it to Damien, and so on and so on, okay? So we go all the way down the line, and then we're going to hear what the last person has to say. Okay. All right. Okay, Josh? Shh, quietly. Damien. That's okay.
No, I forgot.
Go ahead, Josh. Tell Damien.
I forgot.
Tell Samson. What?
That makes no sense.
You got it? Okay, Samantha, what was it? I like what? I like pizza.
I thought it was something about objective, the thing that you said.
I said
Primary objective thing.
evidence is proof that something is true. That's what I said to Kevin.
And I said that's
Then
the
he
first
said I
time
like
they not
pizza.
hear
Then he
me.
said I like pizza. And then
All right, so Kevin said he forgot. Right? So
I told him
after
the
a
first
little
time they
bit,
did not hear me, then I forgot.
after a little while of hearing information, sometimes you forget something or you leave something out of it. So
Yeah, so
then
I just had to say I like
it doesn't have a primary source anymore, right? Okay, so now we're going to.
Let's try it again.
Okay, so now spread out around the room. Let's try now. Spread out to someplace around the room, wherever you want. Standing up, Kevin. Okay. Does anyone have anything that they want to start off with as a primary source? Maybe something that has to do with school or history.
I got one.
Right, Josh? One that has to do with school or history or something.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me what it is.
What do you think?